we're going to talk with some folks from Pornhub. Sex trafficking, you and I have talked about it for a long time. Human trafficking, sex trafficking. We're number one. We're number one. We really are, unfortunately, when it comes to sex trafficking and human trafficking in America. But help has arrived from, I suspect, what most people would think the most unlikely source.
Absolutely.
So we're going to find out why and how when we return, right?
Absolutely. It's going to be a great discussion. I think it's going to be a message people are not expecting to hear, especially from a platform like Pornhub. So let's get into it.
I can't wait to do that, Elvis. You familiar?
Somewhat. Can't wait.
That's what I mean.
You're not a good
Lots
actor,
to talk
big guy.
about.
Yeah. So we'll get into that next. Who's going to join us?
Solomon Friedman. He's actually one of the partners. So he's one of the owners. Ethical Capital Partners acquired a company that owns Pornhub and all your favorite sites.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't convict me right here on the air.
Oh, no, there's
Don't
no
make
shame.
me name them.
There's no shame. So here's my mission. For the avoidance of doubt, I'm not marketing porn. I personally am not a consumer. I don't judge adults who are. But what I'm doing is
Same
keeping
here.
children out of porn.
That's right.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what we're not doing is shaming any adult for doing adult things. What we are definitely drawing the line on is it is not appropriate for children. Children should not be exploited. And consenting adults who enjoy adult content should not be inadvertently contributing to child harm. Agreed?
And because if for 99% of adults, if they knew that they were contributing, they would just fall out of their chair, right?
Well, there's
We
a lot
hope.
of stigma involved with it. And unfortunately, the whole topic of child exploitation and adult sexual entertainment has become convoluted. So whether or not you consume adult sexual entertainment is none of my business. My point is we should all be able to agree that children don't even belong in that conversation. There's nothing pornographic about a child. It is child sex abuse material, or CSAM.
Absolutely.
So again, let's keep that out of the conversation. Let's eliminate CSAM, and let's also limit children from adult content and let adults do adult things with their freedom and with safeguards.
I think one of our problems in America is that we have a third grade mentality when it comes to sex and can't even talk about important subjects like this that we think is important enough that folks, you need to listen and hear what Pornhub is doing to combat human trafficking, sex trafficking, children being trafficked for sex online.
And even just exploitation in general. So there's a lot of different ways harmful things can happen to children. Any form of child sexual abuse material is absolutely exploitation. It's not always the same thing as trafficking, but it is very much related to it. So protecting children on the internet goes far beyond the porn industry. But if all we can do with this dialogue is have a solutions-oriented approach to keep child pornography away from any sort of internet platform, and by the way, that's doable. This is a solvable problem. That in and of itself is massive, not only for this generation, but for the ones to come.
It's going to be an interesting conversation that will kick in here in just a moment. Kim Kelley is here. And your website, Kim, is what?
DigitalDefendersUnited.org. I started a nonprofit to focus on digital safety because that's how we can combat child trafficking and exploitation in this digital age.
And you were a victim of child trafficking and sex trafficking.
Absolutely.
Correct.
The first 20 years of my life was cult abuse, including trafficking. So this comes from a deep place of passion and understanding and lived experience. And also with that solutions-oriented approach, let's not just talk about it. Let's actually solve these problems. Let's actually do something about it.
Thank you, Kim. It's great to have you here.
Great to see you, Dan.
And Elvis, great to have you here as well, my friend.
Thank you
Elvis
very
and I are writing a book together. I'll tell you about that.
Ooh, excited to hear.
I just read the first 5 pages. Oh, Kim, be great to read those first 5 too.
I'll content edit.
Okay, if I had
She
them with me,
will.
I'd give them to you.
But that's another one that she won't tell you what you want to hear. She'll tell you the truth.
Always.
All right, we'll be right back here on the program, and we'll have a conversation. I want you to introduce our guest here in just a moment, but one of the owners.
Yes.
From
Solomon
Pornhub.
Friedman. Yes.
And it will join us next. Okay, Kim Kelley is here. Kim's website, DigitalDefendersUnited.org. Kim, it is so good to have you back in studio.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
How did this relationship begin? And tell me what Pornhub is doing to help stop what's been going on in this country. We lead the world in child trafficking and human trafficking and also kiddie porn.
Absolutely. So there's a horrendous issue with child exploitation in general. We're aware that there's a lot of terrible material on the internet that doesn't belong there, but specifically when it comes to child sex abuse material, or CSAM, there is no excuse in 2024 that that material exists on the internet. And we're going to explain why. We're also going to explain, ironically, how Pornhub and their platforms are actually leading by example in the doing the right thing in digital safety. So Solomon Friedman is going to join us here shortly. He's the VP of Compliance. So he's one of the owners of the company that owns Pornhub and what are all your favorite sites? I don't even know all their names, but what they've done to safeguard their platforms is pretty incredible. I think the public needs to know about this. And the reason that I'm working with them, number one, child sex abuse material should not exist. And by the way, it does not exist on Pornhub or any of Pornhub's platforms. Now, the public doesn't really know that. There's a lot of advocacy groups that are sort of dedicated to taking down Pornhub, but the irony is that adult content is not illegal. It's not going to go away. Whether or not you love it or hate it, let's be real, it's never going away. So that's a losing battle.
You don't think it's a fad?
It's been around since the beginning of millennia.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me from a logical standpoint.
Humor, yeah.
I know I'm playing along, but like, let's be real, right? I'm a realist when it comes to activism. This is not about performative activism. This is about actual solutions. So hopefully all of us can agree that child exploitation on the internet is not okay, and that child sex abuse material should not exist. Also, that adult content, adult sexual entertainment, should have nothing to do with children. Children should be separated from it. Abusive content should not exist. So I partnered with Pornhub as a consultant to help them with their online safety practices and advocacy because, first of all, there's a lot to understand about the safeguards that they've implemented. And here's the main point. This is what I want the public to understand. We're going to unpack the how and the why and all the ways they do it, but I want the public to get the point. If Pornhub is monitoring each piece of content on their platform, number one, there's no child abuse material. The DOJ did a 4-month investigation and verified that. Number two, they are moderating and monitoring every single piece of content. So here's my point. What's Google's excuse? What's Meta's excuse and TikTok and Twitter and all these other platforms that are rampant with exploitive content?
These huge multinational companies, yes.
If the public knew this was a solvable problem, we the people could hold big tech giants accountable because child exploitation should not exist on the internet. That is a solvable problem.
So now, folks, we brought it full circle as now you know why Pornhub is with us today. Because this should put pressure, and not only on these big companies, these big tech giants that are doing nothing, but the politicians who are doing nothing.
Absolutely. Well, let's actually solve problems, not just write bills and put Band-Aids on things.
Absolutely. And Pornhub monitors all those videos?
Every single piece of content. Solomon's going to unpack that here with us shortly.
Now, if they need some help, Elvis and I,
it's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
Right. But that's, see, even when we're talking about this serious matter, here I go like a child. But I think that's our problem in America. We need to address this like adults and stop pretending and do something about it.
Absolutely. There's a lot of bias, whether it be political or religious, that keep people away from this dialogue. And people have told me who know my work, wow, I can't believe you're aligning with Pornhub. Okay, first of all, you ever heard the saying, you can't beat them, join them? Let's be realistic about our approach in doing the right thing, not taking away freedoms and fun from adults, but by protecting children with holistic solutions.
Exactly. So let's bring Solomon Friedman in from Pornhub. His official title, again, is what?
He's the VP of Compliance. He's also a criminal justice attorney, so this man knows his stuff. He's been very involved. Yeah.
Now, Elvis, watch what you say.
Sure.
All right, let's bring Solomon in. Solomon, thanks for hanging with us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, Kim just laid it out there, and Solomon, I hope that the actions being taken by your company, Pornhub, will put the pressure on these tech giants for doing the same, and that's to combat these predators out there looking for children in pornography. And tell us what you're doing at Pornhub and why.
Sure. So just over a year ago, in March of 2023, my partners and I acquired a company called MindGeek, which owns and operates Pornhub. So we own Pornhub and many of your other favorite platforms. And we approach this with really a singular goal in mind. And that is recognizing, I think Kim said it very eloquently, adult entertainment isn't going anywhere. It's legal, it's constitutionally protected, but it needs to be done safely. And it needs to be done not only safe within the bounds of the adult industry, but really to lead by example for the broader internet. And what Pornhub and all of the platforms that we own have in common is really a world-class trust and safety system. And that begins from the moment an individual applies to upload content all the way until the end moderation process that ensures that every piece of content is content for which the individuals featured in it are of age and consent, and that content meets some very strict guidelines. And this is obviously an enormous investment, and I'm happy to talk about that and unpack that. But trust and safety is really our priority. And I think people, they sort of get surprised when they hear that a company that owns and operates Pornhub has trust and safety at the heart of everything they do. But when you look under the hood and you learn more about it, you realize that this is a fight that everybody has a part in. Nobody can shirk their responsibility. And we really, from top to bottom, have done an enormous amount to make the internet a safer place. And I really hope that all of our competitors in the adult space copy us, but so do the tech giants in the mainstream space, because protecting children is really everybody's responsibility.
Solomon Friedman with us. He's one of the owners of Pornhub. Kim, do you want to go for Solomon?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to say here in terms of why this matters and the impact that this could have. I want Solomon to also talk about why it could be a profit-driven decision. And here's where I'm going with this. In order for us to hold other tech giants responsible and accountable, ultimately, because, the internet was not around when the Constitution was written, it's not exactly regulated. Now, let me be clear. I'm not asking for more federal government involvement in anything. However, there has to be some sort of safeguards. We have to incentivize these tech giants to do the right thing. Now, how do we do that realistically? If we make it profit-driven. Now, hypothetically, if you knew, Dan, that Bing was, first of all, free of child exploitation, did not allow it, did not have it on its platform, and monitored and made sure every piece of content was safe, would you or would you not gravitate from Google to Bing? So we, the people, could vote with our dollars. We could actually incentivize these companies that are doing the right thing. That's a big part of where I'm going with this, not only working with Ethical Capital Partners and their platforms, but we could take this so much further. So, Solomon, from your point of view, what, aside from ethics, what incentivized you to do this, and how do you see this as something that's sustainable, not only for you, but for other platforms?
Well, I think number one, we all want to live value-driven lives. So I think we got to start there, right? I think the vast majority of Americans, I'm Canadian, I think we share a lot of the same core values, Western liberal democracies, that, we want to protect the vulnerable. We want to take responsibilities for our choices. We want to enable adults to express themselves freely. And it's a matter of self-determination. So, number one, you got to lead with your values. But I agree with you completely. I've always had the view that there is no tension between safety and profitability. And in fact, nobody wants to support or engage with a platform that is harming individuals, that is promoting harm. I think that people want to gravitate towards products which are safe, which promote safety, which have trust and safety at the heart of everything they do. So when it comes to our platforms, we really start at the very beginning. So first of all, and I invite any of your listeners then to try this out, it is impossible to upload content to Pornhub or any of our other platforms until and unless your identity is verified. So it's not like YouTube or Reddit or Twitter or Facebook where anyone can just start an account and start posting really whatever they want. An individual's identity, their consent, their age has to be verified. We do this using both automated means, that is AI means of verifying documentation being authentic, but also using a team of human moderators. And Dan, if you send me your application, I'll get you on the team. But I got to tell you, there's a 90-day training period before you have any access to live content. You're tested for 90 days. We have staff that works in shifts 24/7. First of all, they're verifying age, identity, and consent of anyone applying to upload. So it's not just, you can't just upload. And once that application is accepted, every single piece of content is first put through, we're about a dozen automated engines that scan it against databases of known child sex abuse material. So we subscribe to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the Internet Watch Foundation's list, Safer by Thorn, Google and YouTube have some tools. We subscribe to every database we possibly can to check in an automated way all submitted content against these databases. And then, only then, if it passes those levels of approval, is it reviewed by a human. It's in its entirety, looking not just for the law, and this is really important in terms of how our company views our responsibility. I always say, and my role within the ownership group as one of the partners and the vice president of compliance, I always say complying with the law is like putting your pants on in the morning. You don't get a medal for it. That's basic level stuff. It's important to us that we go above and beyond that. And that includes as well moderating for content that might be legal, but we consider harmful and therefore will not allow on our platform. But that can only happen with human moderation. Now, Kim talked about the commercial side. Is this expensive? Of course it's expensive. Our company, we're not a Google tech giant, and in the adult world we're pretty large. The company employs about 1,400 or 1,500 people. A full 20% of them work in trust and safety. So that's an enormous investment in people and resources. So, when it comes to the uploader verification and the moderation, we take that responsibility very seriously. But it actually continues beyond that. And, I'd be more than happy to show this to your listeners, and they can try it. We have a banned word list, banned words and terms. We're about 40,000 words right now in over 30 languages, that when an individual searches them or enters them as a proposed title or a search term, they receive a result showing no content, but also explaining that this work is prohibited. But for people searching for illegal material, we know that people will come to anywhere on the internet and search for illegal material. They're not going to find it on our site, but we actually have partnered with a number of organizations, including in the United States, to try to direct people looking for illegal material to get the help that they need. We can't just stand back, I think, as a company with our reach and say, well, they're not going to find that material on our site. We say that it's prohibited, and that's the end of that. But we actually have partnered with these organizations to try to get people the help they need. And my view is that one person takes advantage of that help and it saves one child from a lifetime of suffering, then that's reason enough to do it. But you really have to be serious about this. And we hope to lead by example, not just for the adult world, but for the broader social network world as well.
I'm hopeful that you're a trend setter here. Have you gotten any pushback from competitors, for example, because you mentioned it, and I was talking with Kim about it. It's costly to do what you're doing, so it's not a moneymaker.
Absolutely.
So what kind of pushback, or what are you hearing from your competitors?
Yeah, so in January 2021, that's 2 years before we acquired the company, they rolled out the verified uploader program for all content. In other words, nobody could upload content unless they were a verified uploader with their age, identity, and consent. The rest of the, call it what it is, the rest of the porn world said, you guys are done. Nobody is going to jump through all those hoops in order to upload content. Nobody's going to trust you with their ID. And over 600,000 verified uploaders later, and 130 million daily active users later, my view is the free market has voted. And they have come out overwhelmingly in favor of these types of measures. One of the things that I'm really proud of, and I know, it's like, it's a little joke, nobody goes to Pornhub to read the articles, but you should spend some time reading some of the articles, including our twice yearly transparency report, where we set out in detail everything that I'm talking about today. And some people kind of scratch their head to say, you're giving away your secret sauce. You're telling people all the measures you employ, all the software you use, all the metrics that guide your removal of content. And I say, yes, I want it to be copied by our competition. I want every adult platform to copy us and to do exactly what we're doing. And, we do that, the internet is going to be a safer place. So frankly, I don't look at this as a competitive issue. And if our competitors are skeptical about it, my view is the results speak for themselves. We all have a responsibility to keep the internet safe. It's not a matter of competition or commercial advantage.
Solomon, I just wish you had passion for what you're doing. Do you mind holding for just a minute? Solomon, we've got a hard break to get to, and we'll come right back with you. Do you mind?
I'd love to stick around.
Thank you, Solomon. Solomon Friedman with us, one of the owners of Pornhub. We're talking about what the steps that Pornhub they've taken to try to make it safe as far as children and how we've seen kids in this country exploited for sex by adults. The honor system's not going to work. It's not going to work, is it? And some of these companies will go, are you 18 to enter? If that is the honor system. Well, come on. But Pornhub's taken some drastic steps to stop this. And that's what we're talking about today. Solomon Friedman will be with us when we return. It is 4:51. It's 82 degrees in Midtown, J-Town. It's Wednesday. It's July 17th. Is it just me or is this month flying by?
It's flying by.
This year
for sure.
is, to be honest.
Wait till we start having fun, y'all, and it really will go by fast. We'll be right back.
Good show, and it's really interesting.
Man, I love smart people. And I love having you here too, Elvis. But having Kim Kelley here. Kim, it is so much fun to have you. You work so hard to do everything you can to stop this embarrassing problem that our country's suffering from, and that's child porn, that's human trafficking and sex trafficking with our children. And it's no one's platform in an presidential election year, no one's platform whatsoever. And that ought to get people's attention. Kim's website is digitaldefendersunited.org. That's the website. Check that out. Solomon Friedman is here. Wilcox, who is that? Do we know him? Solomon Friedman is here, one of the owners of Pornhub. And Solomon, thanks for holding over. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. I want to read you a text that's coming on the program that they write on the Advanced Rehab and Medical text line. You can text this, folks, if you have a question. It's 731-800-8398, 731-800-8398. This one reads, while listening, I've researched the lawsuits against Pornhub. If you guys are doing nothing wrong, then why do you continue paying people off? Solomon, what do you say to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, there were lawsuits which were filed before Esco Capital Partners acquired the company. That is, this is about conduct and trust and safety practices that existed years before we bought the company. And to echo what Kim said, just to add to it, the U.S. Department of Justice conducted an investigation. It was actually a 30-month investigation in which they concluded, this is the DOJ, the U.S. Attorney's Office, concluded that they did not find evidence that the company had committed the federal offenses of sex trafficking or the dissemination of child sex abuse material. That doesn't mean people can't make allegations in lawsuits. Of course they can. What's really important is that we get just outcomes for those, but those are allegations. The federal government has investigated and obviously have released what I just said. Now, when it comes to, it's an interesting word, paying people off. When a company or any person does wrong, whether intentional or otherwise, individuals are entitled to compensation. There's nothing wrong with that. This is how you learn from mistakes. This is how you get better. I think, there are really two ways to look at this. Either you can put your head in the sand and decide to kick and scream and say, Pornhub is bad and porn is bad and I hate the whole industry. Or you can say, are you serious about learning from the challenges? Because I can tell you this. The criminals are serious about improving their ways of exploiting not just adult platforms, but the internet as a whole. And I believe that we have to learn from past challenges. So I'm actually, very proud of the work that the company has done. And when any company sees an opportunity to improve or a reason to compensate or to right wrongs, that's what you have to do. That's what a responsible company does. And there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of in that regard.
Solomon Friedman joining us, one of the owners of Pornhub. Solomon, do you have kids? Do you have a family?
I do. I've got 3 teenagers.
Well, then it's personal then, right?
Well, 100%. I mean, I don't think you need to have kids to want to protect young people, but certainly those parents out there, protecting young people is essential to us. One of the things that I'm really proud of, change that occurred after we acquired the company, is that now anytime somebody goes to Pornhub or any one of our adult platforms for the first time, the first thing they see before any explicit content is they see a link to parental controls. I'm a big believer that parents are an essential part of the solution when it comes to protecting young people from accessing adult material. And I want to be very clear. We as a platform, of course, we have a zero tolerance policy for child sex abuse material, but we also do not want young people accessing our platforms. Pornography is adult entertainment. It's for adults. It's not sex ed. It's not for young people in any way, shape, or form. So for that reason, it was important to us that before seeing any explicit material, parents have the tools at their fingertips. And, I invite your listeners to try that out and to take a look at the parental controls and see. We post a list of resources. You can block it at the browser level. You can block it at the router level, the internet service provider level. It's very weird, by the way, for a website to provide a list of how to block us, because we want parents to have that control. That's part of being a responsible platform on the internet.
You don't have to answer this right now, but Elvis said he was doing some research with that, and he can't figure out how to unblock it. And he's pretty upset about that. But there's one more question here on our Advanced Rapid Medical text line I wanted to ask you before the news hits. This one comes in for you, Solomon, and they write, to date, how many children have you guys helped? It's one thing to talk about the problem, but that solves nothing. What do you say to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the deterrence messaging that I referenced before, that is providing resources to individuals who are searching for illegal content, even though they won't find the content on our platform. We actually provided all of the data related to that project to the University of Tasmania. It was important for us to be open and transparent about it. They published a full report. You can find it on the Internet Watch Foundation's website. Just search for Rethink, that's RETHINK chatbot. That's what the project is called. And it records thousands of interactions. This is the deterrence chatbot. And then almost 100 people found real-world help. So that's on the deterrence side.
Oh, that's
when
great.
It comes to, and it's important to really provide this data. So like I said, others can copy us. We also publish in our transparency report. Once again, it's available on Pornhub.com in the Trust and Safety Center. Please take a look at it, where we go through the amount of content that has been removed and reports made to law enforcement, specifically the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Just this year, NCMEC, that's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they released their annual report, Dan. And when I read it, it didn't surprise me, but it surprises many, many people. So they received from Meta over 20 million reports of suspected child sex abuse material.
Jeez.
That is, people
Reports.
attempting or actually uploading. Okay? Reports from Meta. From Pornhub and its related platforms, the number of reports that it got was about 2,500. And the reason for that is people say, how is that possible that there are so few reports made? And by the way, that's not material that made it on the internet. That's material that was submitted to us for review, and then we turned it over to NCMEC as suspected exploitative material. And I say that when you get the name and ID of every single uploader verified for real, it takes a special kind of stupid to, after giving your real government ID and verifying your identity, to try to submit illegal content.
Yeah, they're off to the next. Yes, absolutely.
And at the same time, NCMEC also reported of how much material, illegal material, they found themselves. Not reported to them, but they found. So for Meta, it was a couple of hundred images or videos. For Pornhub and its platforms in 2023, it was 0.
That's
not
incredible.
One, not 2, but 0. So the proof is in the pudding. You know, when one of your, the last person who messaged asked about saving children and talk is cheap. I agree, talk is cheap, but the proof is in the pudding. NCMEC says in 2023 we found 0 on the platform, and 0 is our goal year after year. And it should be the goal of every website and platform online.
Way to go,
Absolutely.
Solomon. That is fantastic. Solomon Friedman, one of the owners of Pornhub, with us. Solomon, we've got news about the fire. Do you mind holding over and doing one more segment? Do you have time?
I'd love to. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Well, it's pleasure's all ours. And I know Elvis has questions for you. When we come back, Elvis, you'll be first up for Solomon Friedman, one of the owners of Pornhub, talking about what Pornhub is doing. And it's costly, but it's worth it to protect
Absolutely.
kids online from these predators.
Absolutely. I want to add to what Solomon said and the question of how many children have you helped. So Pornhub is not a nonprofit. They're not pretending to dedicate their lives to helping children. But I do own and have worked with various nonprofits, and I want to put this out there. We've asked various religious and various types of nonprofits and groups and churches and people to help support our work. Guess who has? Pornhub.
Right.
Pornhub has made a donation to not only rescue and rehabilitate child trafficking survivors. So as far as putting their money where their mouth is, I can personally testify that not only are they doing their part to safeguard their platforms, which is huge, which no one's asking them or forcing them to do, but they are actually collaborating with various NGOs, nonprofits, activist groups to go above and beyond, not only in awareness and activism, but actually supporting the causes.
Yeah, this is very encouraging, but it's also sad that it's not a politician with a platform to combat this. It's Pornhub doing it, and Solomon, I'm really proud of what you're doing, what you guys are doing. I know you're very serious about it. I hear the passion. Can you hear the passion in his voice, Elvis?
Absolutely.
Sounds like a serious man to me. And he's right about that, because you get these pedophiles, and you're asking for their name, their government ID, they're out of there. So if these tech giants don't step up and do what Pornhub is doing, well, they'll just go right on to the next one.
It also means they are intentionally profiting off the abuse of children if they choose
not
to implement these solutions. That's where we're going with this.
There you go. There's a reason why that on the Suicide Watch, that Epstein, in all those coincidences, where the cameras went out, at the same time, two guards on Suicide Watch went to smoke a cigarette together. And it just, and he killed himself at the same time.
Let's not pretend to solve this problem. Let's actually solve this problem.
Let's do it. And Solomon will be with us when we come back.
And it's been a real eye-opener hearing you talk today. So good on you. Keep it up. And I hope you can get that message out to a broader audience. A couple of things I want to ask you, though.
We have a potential listening and viewing audience today, Solomon, of 8 billion people. So I don't know.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
just incredible.
We do. Okay, go right ahead, Elvis.
Hey, Solomon, is child pornography a problem that's unique to the United States, or is it everywhere?
Yeah, so I don't mean to be a stickler for terminology, but I hate the phrase child pornography. In general, what police and intelligence agencies are using these days is child sex abuse material. And the reason for that is it makes it so clear that children should have nothing to do with pornography whatsoever. Pornography might call it expression, call it art, call it whatever you want, but kids can't consent, so they can't be involved in pornography. The question that you're asking about where it's prevalent, it is a global problem. And it's one of the reasons why we work with over 50 NGOs, along with some leading law enforcement agencies around the world. Like anything internet related, it's not confined to one geographic location. It is a global problem, and global problems require global solutions.
Hey, referring back to what you were talking about earlier, I was hearing some talk about how if other platforms would jump in and do the same thing you're doing, then the public would move toward them, hopefully, and financially influence the others to come along. So are y'all going to put out, or have you put out a report card on the other platforms and who's doing what?
Yeah, so remember, we're not an advocacy organization. We're not an NGO. We don't report on other platforms. We report on our own, thoroughly and transparently. In fact, we call it the transparency report. It goes through detail by detail, every category of content that we block, how many users we've banned, really in very granular detail. What I would recommend for your listeners is that they go check out NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they're the clearinghouse for reports about child sex abuse, about internet child exploitation, and they publish a report every year. They publish a number of reports, and they rank by all sorts of categories every social media platform that reports to them, as well as adult platforms. That's a really good place where, I think that there's all sorts of methods for encouragement. You can have, and I speak as a parent, you got positive reinforcement and you got negative reinforcement, right? There are certain statistics you don't want associated with your brand, but NCMEC in the United States and then the Internet Watch Foundation, based out of the United Kingdom, publishes similar metrics for some European platforms. Really, really helpful numbers. I think that'll open the eyes of many in the public.
Hey, Sullivan.
So let me ask you again, Elvis, before you go again, tell me, I want to write this down. What's the name of that website you were recommended to go to check this out?
Yeah, so it's the website for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We call it NECMEC. And NECMEC is a non-governmental agency, but really the clearinghouse there for reports of child exploitation. So police report to them. They send reports out to police. That's missingkids.org. And on that website, you're going to see really there's some actually fantastic resources for keeping young people safe. You'll also see a link to a program there called Take It Down. I'm really proud of that. Take It Down is a program where, let's say a young person has been exploited or has been convinced or coerced or just made a bad decision and produced a nude image of themselves, right? Took a photo or a selfie or a video, and they lose control of it. A bully gets it, an ex gets it, and they're threatening to disseminate it. So NECMEC at missingkids.org has a program where individuals can have a signature, it's called a hash, taken of that piece of content. And then our platform, along with some other social media platforms, we scan every single upload against that list, the Take It Down list, to ensure that it could never be uploaded to our platform. Just one of the initiatives that require working together with organizations like NECMEC.
All right, Solomon, what I'm about to ask you, I think, is a very important question, and I'm interested to hear your answer. Because there are people that are all for the rights of the unborn, but once you're born, you're on your own. Were you invited to the RNC? Are you invited to the DNC to talk about this? And how hard is it for you to get airtime to talk about this? Because, it's Pornhub, and Solomon is one of the owners, and they've taken extensive steps and put their money where their mouth is to combat, I don't want to say child porn, because I agree with Kim and Solomon, what you're saying. How do you say it, Kim?
Child exploitation, or CSAM.
Yeah, or CSAM, child sex abuse material.
Okay. So is it tough for you to get airtime to talk about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll talk first about the audiences where we found them to be really, really receptive. And those are the professionals. So I've been invited to speak at a number of conferences of law enforcement and prosecutors. We're talking about hundreds of cops who devoted their life to eradicating child sex abuse material and internet child exploitation, along with the prosecutors that prosecute those offenses. I've spoken to those organizations. I've made presentations. I've offered our resources to them. Just to give you I'm a details guy. It comes with being a nerd. But one of the things that I told this group is I said, make sure if you get a report that somebody is trying to upload illegal material and you come to our platform with a request, make sure that you also request all of the identifying details that we hold about all of our uploaders, because we can give you this material. You just need to ask for it. But we want law enforcement to know. Ask for this material so we can give it to you to help in your investigation. So I'm finding a lot of receptiveness from law enforcement, prosecutors, really the pros, who know what the problem is and know what the problem isn't. At the same time, I will speak to any group, governmental or non-governmental, that will have me. All I want to do is both share our experience, but I also want to listen. I approach this task with a lot of humility. I'm not the expert, be-all, end-all. I'm doing my very best in this role to learn and to assist the company in implementing best practices and support me doing it, but we want to learn. So, for example, partnering with Kim, who is really both an expert by training, but also by lived experience. We recognize we don't have all the answers. We need the experts to assist us in doing that. We partnered also with the Internet Watch Foundation in the United Kingdom, and in fact, we produced, along with the Internet Watch Foundation, a set of best practices for adult platforms in combating child sex abuse material. So, it can be difficult, to get an invite. People see Pornhub and, their mind kind of shuts off. What will the voters think? What will my constituents think? But we're persistent. I'm a persistent guy. And Ethical Capital Partners, we're a persistent group. And we're just knocking on as many doors as we can, because this work is too important to simply be squandered. So I will go anywhere where I am invited, whether they are religious, not religious, ideologically opposed. I would speak to an anti-porn conference if I was invited, because this is what I would say. I would say, look, you don't like porn, I disagree. So we disagree about that. But what we agree on is that children deserve protection. So let's talk about what we agree on, because we agree on far more than we disagree on. And let's get the work done that's important. So I'm more than happy to share those resources.
That's right, Solomon. And in the day and time we live in, we've got people that their job is to point out the little subtle differences, because we have almost everything in common. That's why the ruling class has done it since day one on planet Earth. You divide and you conquer. Solomon is with us. Solomon Friedman, one of the owners of Pornhub. Elvis, go for Solomon.
Hey, Sullivan, one last thing. Do you have a vision for the future when artificial intelligence inevitably is going to start replacing real people with computerized manufactured images, where that's going to go and problems it's going to cause?
Yeah, that's an absolutely great question. So we're at the forefront, really, of prohibiting deep fakes or generated content that appropriates someone else's image. So you may all recall that these digital images of Taylor Swift really spread like wildfire over, your sort of mainstream social media platforms. Those images, if they were submitted to Pornhub by an uploader, would not have passed even the most cursory review, because what would have happened? The moderator would say, well, here's the image you submitted. Are you Taylor Swift? No, I have your ID in front of me. That's not who you are. This goes no further. So it's interesting when a porn company is at the leading edge of avoiding digital exploitation and preventing that kind of harm. But if we go further from there, I want to make it very clear that our platform treats digitally created child sex abuse material like real child sex abuse material. And we have an equal zero tolerance policy. It doesn't matter whether it is an image of an actual young person, or somebody role-playing as a young person, or a digitally created image that appears to be a young person. We have a zero-tolerance policy. That is child sex abuse material. It is entirely banned. We report it to NECNEC if somebody attempts to upload it. So I think what you're getting at, Elvis, and what's so important is that policy keep pace with technology. The trouble is, so many lawmakers and policymakers don't have a grasp on the current technology, and they don't really want to be educated either. And that is absolutely unacceptable. And I think that's why a tech company like ours, we're 1,400, but about 500 engineers who are solving really difficult problems, including detecting deepfakes and finding ways to ensure that every piece of content that's uploaded is content of a real person who has given their real and authentic consent to appear on the platform, because nothing else will do.
That was one of the things I thought was so interesting when Solomon walked me through the trust and safety protocols, because one of the accusations about Pornhub is that, what about revenge porn? So let's say you consent to a video with your boyfriend or whatever, and then he's your ex, and now he's trying to post it everywhere on the internet and monetize it. They require a consent form for each model featured in each piece of content, even when their face isn't shown. I've asked these questions. Then there's also a form where you can ask for it to be taken down even if you previously provided consent. Can you talk more about that, Solomon?
Yeah, I'd love to. At the heart of our consent policy is that consent has to be ongoing. We don't believe that an individual should consent once and then lose control of their image in perpetuity. So on the bottom of every single one of our pages, on every one of our platforms, is a link to something called the Content Removal Request Form. And all an individual has to do is fill out that form and indicate that they have firsthand knowledge, either because it's them or someone they know, that an individual depicted in content has either withdrawn their consent or not provided their consent. What we do then, by the way, and when people hear this from the big tech companies, they lose their minds. We take it down immediately, automatically. No human intervention required. I call it take down first, ask questions later. We then investigate the report, and if the person indeed confirms is my identity, we keep it down. We also provide them with resources to remove it from other platforms as well. But most importantly, we take it down immediately. So that should be the gold standard. That should be what everyone is doing, because an individual can consent, make a totally voluntary adult decision, but then change their mind. And they should have the ability, I believe in freedom of expression and self-determination. A person has the right to make free choices about their body and their content and their image, but they also have the right to change their mind. And at Pornhub, that's essential, which is why they can withdraw their consent from any of the content posted on our content sharing platforms.
We've got just a couple more questions we want to ask Solomon, and we had a full bank of phone calls. Folks, we're not going to take any calls because Solomon is just about out of time here. We'll take your calls after Solomon is finished up here. We do have some breaking news. President Joe Biden it's been confirmed he has COVID-19 for a third time. We'll get to that story in detail here in just a little bit. But Solomon, there's a couple more questions that have come in on our text line, Advanced Rehab and Medical text line. You can text questions to Solomon if you'd like. It's 731-800-8398. This one reads, it seems like a publicist stunt, honestly, to make something bad seem like something good. Damage control, not a real solution. Solomon, go.
Yeah, well, I'm not a publicist. I have no training in PR. I'm one of the owners of the company. And what I'd say is as follows. You can think porn is bad. That's fine. Adults make free decisions. Don't make porn and don't consume it. But what we all agree on is how important it is to protect children. I also say, to Kim's point, and this is me wearing my constitutional lawyer hat here, the Supreme Court of the United States has reaffirmed time and time again that you can't ban porn even if you wanted to, okay? Which means it's here to stay. So we have a decision to make. Either we can call it bad and call it mean names and stigmatize the people who are involved in it and therefore allow evil to flourish. Because that's what happens when something is in the shadows. When it's stigmatized and full of shame and secretive, then no good can be worked with respect to it. Or you can say, it's here to stay. We should support efforts to make it as safe as it possibly can be. And that means opening our eyes like grown-ups and saying, porn isn't going anywhere. It's funny, you're talking about how long it's existed. I think for as long as humans have existed, we've been drawing naughty pictures on cave walls, and every more advanced form as technology evolves. But we have a responsibility, I think, to protect the most vulnerable in our society. And you can do it whether you love porn or whether you hate it. So I'm not at all offended by that question. And I invite those people who don't like porn, that's fine, but to support the efforts to protect the vulnerable and protect all those, whether it's young people or people who don't consent, from exploitation online.
Solomon, one more question for you. From the Advanced Rehab and Medical text line. This one reads, how will this not drive pedophiles deeper underground and make them harder to find? Wouldn't it be better to use these platforms to set the pedophiles and traffickers up to gain their information and find them? Solomon, go right ahead.
Yeah, so in fact, by requiring uploader verification and getting the real details of all uploaders, we actually promote accountability for individuals who are attempting to upload content, because we can then provide all of that data to law enforcement. What we really want are spaces which are safe from exploitation. And it's interesting, you talk about driving pedophiles underground. One of the reasons why we think deterrence messaging is so important is because we know that when an individual simply doesn't find what they're looking for, I agree, they are going to go elsewhere, go to the dark web, go deeper, etc. So that's why we partner with mental health associations in the United States and Canada and in virtually every jurisdiction in which we operate to try to get these people help and bring them out of the dark and bring them to real world resources. Recognizing, look, Pornhub, we are not mental health experts. We have to partner with organizations who can actually do this valuable work. It'd be very easy to just turn a blind eye to it. As far as we're concerned, that's simply not good enough. And my hope, by the way, is that when you use Google or you search something on Facebook and Instagram and you use one of these keywords that's related to illegal content, they copy word for word our deterrence messaging strategy. I'm actually presenting it around the world. I'll be in Australia at the end of August to present this technology and this program to a security and defense intelligence conference because I want it copied. Because we need to stop these people in their tracks. That is the only way to keep kids safe.
Way to go,
Absolutely.
Solomon, and working hand in hand with law enforcement. Solomon, it's been a pleasure to have you on the program. Solomon Friedman is one of the owners of Pornhub. If you're just joining us, you can listen to the replay of the show or watch the replay of it. And Kim, I'll let you have the last word here with Solomon, but they're doing a lot, and they're one thing that we've got to do as to help in this cause, and that's to stop this ridiculous epidemic. And I think we could call it that with sex trafficking and child trafficking, human trafficking, and in this case, using kids, these pedophiles online. Pornhub's doing a lot, and they're spending a lot of money to do it, and they're working with law enforcement to stop this. So we need to grow up and be adults and have these conversations. It's not that hard, folks, to have an adult conversation. It's just not. And if you don't, I mean, who am I to give advice for parents? But it's been my experience with family members who share this type of, share information with kids to the point, not the details, but don't paint a picture that it's Disneyland and keep them in the dark. Talk with them about these very important, and maybe you think it's a difficult conversation to have, so they're aware. Kim?
Absolutely. To your point, and I want to add to what Solomon was saying in response to that question. So with the premise that someone thinks porn is bad, okay, cool story. It's not illegal. It's not going away. So question for you, if we were to hypothetically get rid of, for example, Pornhub or the biggest platforms that are willing to do the right thing, where would that demand go? Everything is pretty much supply and demand. You will never destroy the demand. So if you were to get rid of the biggest players, where would the demand go? And the supply, it would go to the black market in the shadows, right. Like Solomon said. Would that be safer for anybody? Absolutely not. So why would we not work with the biggest players to not only make their platform safe, but to hopefully hold other platforms accountable to follow in suit? I also want to make something really clear.
Mark Twain said to your point, if you want to make something valuable, write across the sky in big letters, prohibition. It makes anything valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. That increases the demand and even the interest in it.
Right.
So I actually did about an almost 2-hour interview with Solomon Friedman and Sarah Bain, both from Ethical Capital Partners, who are owners of Pornhub. You guys can look it up on YouTube because we unpacked a lot of the how and how they do things and why and all these different things. So there's a lot of information on the internet. And of course, a lot of people are not aware of all the trust and safety measures that Pornhub has implemented. But I encourage you to do that research. I also want to emphasize some very important things. Again, when we're talking about whether or not we like certain things, just because I'm not a consumer of porn, just because I don't have children, doesn't mean that I can't look at the situation realistically. Now, I am a survivor of child trafficking. I am someone who spent the first 20 years of my, what you could call a childhood, suffering extreme abuse and exploitation of all kinds. Now, when a lot of people have this perspective of, oh, I don't like something, it's gross, cool story, but that's not solving the problem. So while everybody's performative activism may sound nice, what are they actually doing to help the victims, to solve the problem, to prevent people from coming in this realm where they're suffering from years of abuse? This morning, I had a conversation with one of the heads of Crime Stoppers here in Tennessee, and I told him just the summary of what I'm doing with Pornhub, and he wasn't aware of what they're doing, but he loved that concept. Why? They fight internet crimes against children every single day. They deal with this in the trenches. Those of us who are actually doing the real work, we're not looking at this with a political or religious bias. We're looking at this with a solutions-oriented approach. So I want to welcome people to, first of all, inform yourself. Who's part of the solution and who's actually part of the problem? Sometimes it's not the people making all the noise. Sometimes it's the people that are willing to work together and maybe even compromise on things they don't have to agree on. But we can work together for a solutions-oriented approach. And yes, that involves big tech platforms, cybersecurity experts and technologists. It involves law enforcement, policymakers, legislators, and even activists and survivors. So my goal, the reason I founded Digital Defenders United, is to not only bring together the experts, but to implement holistic solutions to these problems. Child sex abuse material should not be a problem that we are still dealing with in 2024. If the people knew this is a stupid problem, it's a solvable problem. Therefore, it's by design. It is intentional that big platforms are not safeguarding their content. Let's hold them accountable. Let's change things, and let's protect children.
Well said, Kim. And Solomon, thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope we talk again soon, Solomon.
I hope so, too. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Have a great afternoon, sir.
You too.
It's 5:39. It's Dave Parker past the hour. The Cobra past the hour. Well, What'd you make of all that, Elvis?
Amazing. I learned so much in so little time. Glad to have you and glad to have Solomon, too.
Yeah, very interesting discussion.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to hear, but I'm glad I heard it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of people are surprised that not only people like us are willing to have this discussion, people like me who, I guess I'm supposed to be against everybody who's doing things that are adult worthy, right? If we have a solutions-oriented approach, we can actually solve these problems. And that's the intent. And I hope people understand that.
Yeah, we got to deal with things head on. The only option that we don't have is doing nothing. And that's the easy thing to do.
Unfortunately, that's what's happening right now. In many cases, there's just this blissful ignorance, thinking like we can close our eyes and ears and it'll go away. Or, ew, gross, I can't think about it, talk about it. You know what's ironic is that a lot of people that have expressed concern for, I can't believe you're working with Pornhub. And of course, they're not understanding the protecting kids part of it, but they're saying, I was super addicted to porn. It was a big issue for me, so I hate it. I can't even talk about it. Okay, I understand, and I am not and never will promote porn. I'm not promoting Pornhub. I'm not trying to make them look pretty. I'm bringing in experts and people to collaborate with to see if there are any gaps we can fill. But here's my point. Someone who's so triggered by porn because it has affected them, thinking that we can just ignore it and it will go away, how is that helping children? How is that helping with prevention and education? And by the way, the people doing this, are we also telling kids that if you put pictures of yourself on the internet or text them to a friend and they're explicit images, those are never going away. Those are going to exist forever on the internet. Are we teaching children the responsibility? I'm not saying it's all their responsibility. I'm saying, are we teaching them the ramifications of sexualization?
You've got to educate them.
Absolutely.
Right? If you don't, someone else will.
Absolutely. You know that the average age these days, I was talking to a detective who's been in the field for over 27 years combating human trafficking. The average age right now is 11 for children that get into trafficking.
That is just, see, if we were to do something like that, we would put a gun in our mouths.
Absolutely. But that's the average age. That means parents need to start having these conversations with their kids when they're like 8 and 9. As uncomfortable as they may be, if you're not willing to have these conversations with your child, you better believe someone on the internet is and will.
Well, and people got to realize these images are real people.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've created kind of a disconnect from reality
that's a good point, Elvis.
with images, but they're real people, and this actually happened to somebody. And if you saw it out on the street, you'd be yelling, but if you see it on your computer, it's entertainment.
Absolutely.
It's an excellent point. All right, let's get a phone call or two here.
I want to talk to people who have questions about Pornhub, so stay with us if you're on hold.
Right, and we got to figure out Elvis still has himself blocked, and he is a little upset.
I'll help you troubleshoot.
But I thought that was a great conversation with Solomon about the safety nets that have been put into place to stop this crap and letting adults steal a child's life. For their own
Absolutely.
sexual gratification. That is just up with which we will not put.
Absolutely.
That is, it's not, and it's bad enough the damage is done with the act. But folks, it don't stop there. These victims take this with them their entire life, and it robs so many people, children, of their entire life.
Absolutely.
And we've got to stop it. We'll be right back. It is 16 minutes past. Stand by for news and be patient on those phone lines. Stay right there, and we'll pick you up when we return here on the program. My name is Dan Reaves, along with Elvis Rogers and Kim Kelley. Kim's website is digitaldefendersunited.org. Please visit that website. Let's take some phone calls. What do you say? You're on the air. Go.
How can you assure that that corporation is not going to be like all other corporations that just lie to us and they're not in the process of just doing damage control?
Absolutely. Okay, so let's unpack this question. First of all, while I'm here to talk about it, I'm not here to make Pornhub look pretty. I'm here to actually look into this issue, bring together the experts to solve the problem. So point one, beyond talking, I've had a full in-depth tour of the back end of the trust and safety protocols with another cybersecurity expert. I'm also bringing in other people in law enforcement and other realms of expertise, intel, cybersecurity, etc., to see if there's any gap. So let's unpack this. One, they're not just talking about doing better. They've actually done better. Point being, they don't have child sex abuse material on their platform. Anybody can try to prove me wrong. I bet you $100. Point two, they've implemented a rigorous system that you have to verify every piece of content that before it's uploaded. So they're not just talking about it, they've taken action. So I can talk about, how they're trying to work with law enforcement and different things, but they're not a nonprofit or an advocacy group. They're a porn company. What they've done is rid their platforms, plural, of child sex abuse content. I'm not sure if there's another big tech platform that can say that. Are you?
Well, there's a lot of questions there. No, I'm not sure because I haven't asked them.
Okay.
How do we know that they're in it for the right reasons? How do we not know that they're just in it either for damage control, financial gain, or some type of notoriety? How do we know that isn't the case? Because there is so...
I tell you, one thing that comes to mind for me, it doesn't matter to me what the reason is if it's working. And it was zero.
I agree with that.
That was zero.
So again, we let them prove with their actions. They're not saying we want to rid our platforms of child abuse material. They're saying we have done it. And we are working to continue improving. So I get the question, but I'm also answering it very directly. They're not just talking about it, and I'm not just here to talk about it. They're working with third parties that will verify them, not to mention the DOJ's 30-month investigation, not to mention working with Crime Stoppers International, etc. This takes a team. It's not up to Pornhub to solve the world's problems in internet exploitation, but they can absolutely ensure that their platform is free of child sex abuse material. To me, that goes beyond words. Those are actions.
And it was great to hear Solomon talk about the cooperation with police departments and...
they work with a lot of law enforcement and conferences and a lot of different people.
Now, what can we do to help you with spread your message?
I love that question. Thank you. So my message really is about protecting children, and it's about actionable solutions. It's about holistic solutions. It's not just about talking about it, but everything does begin with awareness. We have to understand the problem in order to implement holistic or effective solutions. So let's talk about what the problem is. The problem is that children are suffering from exploitation, including trafficking and all kinds of things, but maybe that's not something tangible for the everyday parent or person who's concerned. What is tangible is digital safety, and that's why I've narrowed down my focus, because I've been advocating against child trafficking and exploitation for years, and I'm a child trafficking survivor. This is so near and dear to my heart. Let's be honest, though, it's not tangible for people. Even those who are willing to be aware, which are few, there's not much they can actually do about it, and it's intangible to them, so it's overwhelming. But what you can do is protect your children at home. What you can absolutely do is make sure that your children don't have unlimited, unsupervised access to the internet. That's doable. I'm not saying don't give your kids a phone or raise them under a rock. I'm trying to be balanced, and I'm saying there's positives about technology. There's also a lot of inappropriate content and predation on the internet. I've been undercover. I've seen what children see on the internet, and it is horrendous.
I think you need to say again about when you were posing as a 14-year-old girl.
Oof. 12
what
years
happened?
old, 13 years old. All I'm doing, I'm working with law enforcement in these operations. I'm pretending to be a child on the internet. There's no form of entrapment, solicitation, flirting, nothing. I'm setting up a profile on not a dark web app and not a dating app, a network social media meetup app that all your children are downloading from the App Store. I'm setting up a profile with a baby-looking child's face. I filmed this because it's unbelievable.
12 years old, right? In what you told me?
Well, yes. I've been 12 and 13 in various operations. I set up a profile. That's it. I don't send friend requests, message requests, nothing. And within 10 to 30 seconds, every single time in every state, 10 to 30 seconds, it starts pouring predators into my direct messages or friend requests. I filmed this because it's unbelievable. And these messages come in with everything from, hey, baby, you're so cute. Do you have a boyfriend? To what would you do for $500? To the most insanely aggressive, violent things that would not be appropriate for a consensual adult relationship. Like, you guys, I'm a seasoned and very hardened 34-year-old woman. First of all, I can handle this. It's not about my emotions. I'm just letting you know it is so disgusting. It takes me days to just mentally, physically, spiritually detox from that vulgar things I can't say on the radio. Point being, your children cannot unsee this. In the 2.5 days, 3 days that I spend time doing these undercover operations, I probably chat with between 300 and 400 something predators. I've probably seen around 200 images of adult male genitalia during those days of me pretending to be a child. Let me unpack this for you. I have a profile picture that looks like a 12-year-old or maybe 10-year-old child. I'm telling them my age in writing. We have to do that in order for them to qualify for arrest. I'm telling them I'm turning 13 next week. I'm 12 years old. They know my age, and they're expressing the most disgusting, vulgar intent. Again, parents, Your children may not be doing anything wrong, nothing to get attention, but these predators are strategic and they are hunting these children. I am the most chill person you'll ever meet. I am not exaggerating this. I refuse to let my niece grow up in that world. I refuse. This is a solvable problem. This is absolutely not something we should tolerate.
I would assume that there are many girls, 12 years old, 13, that have experienced this, but don't tell their parents because they're afraid they'll lose access to the internet.
Exactly. And I've seen these children on the internet saying, oh my God, this app should have age verification, all these creepy older dudes, etc. So I work with teams that identify these children online that are either, I don't want to say exploiting themselves, but putting content out that is attracting predators. Whether I'm not saying sexual content, I'm saying content that attracts predators, and or in chat rooms or on apps where predators are just preying on them.
And these girls are doing nothing wrong.
No, they're being 14-year-old children on the internet. Right. They're being curious. Maybe they're neglected at home. But the point is that you need to know the digital world that your children are facing. You need to be involved. You need to see the messages that they're sending and receiving and who they're interacting with. Don't think for a second that because your child may indeed be the angel you think they are, that the predators are not hunting them. They cannot regain that innocence once it's lost.
Let's get to the phone lines. Full bank of calls standing by, and you're up next with us here on the Collision Specialist Hotline. You're on the air. Go.
And it's hard to believe those parents did not know that those 13 and 14-year-old girls were flying to Epstein Island also.
See, that's difficult for me to believe as well. You know that some of the youngest victims were 10 years old on record? So the media wants to paint it like they were 14-year-old girls. Some were as young as 10 on record. But to your point, welcome, caller, it's a grooming process, and the parents not only have a massive responsibility, they have a massive role in prevention. So again, there's a lot of parents that are like, I don't want to have the birds and the bees talk with my kid because they're only 12. Guess what? The average age a child is trafficked, according to records and, department heads, FBI, is around 11 years old. That's the average age. You need to start having these conversations with your children when they're very young, especially if you think that handing them a device that has access to all the information that exists in the world is somehow going to be safe for them. That's like handing them a loaded weapon.
Boy, times have changed.
In what world do we think that's safe? And in what world do we think we can give them unlimited, unsupervised access? There's a lot of software technology, and we're creating some solutions that are even more robust. But there's a lot of apps out there that can help you monitor your child's internet activity. There's one called Bark, B-A-R-K, Bark like a dog. I'm not affiliated, but I recommend it to parents because it helps you monitor what your child is doing on their devices.
Okay, I got you.
If you wanted to bark, go ahead, just for sound effects.
So I would imagine there's also cases where people are grooming the parents to some extent. They're setting up confidentiality and trust and establishing that with the parent to gain confidence.
I'm sure that definitely happens on the internet, and I'm sure that happens in person.
In person is what
Absolutely.
I'm thinking.
So my message in general about child exploitation is that predators are very strategic. Did you know that the majority of child trafficking and child abuse cases are from people the child knows? Friends and family members that the child is supposed to be able to trust. That means just because they're attending the same church as you does not mean they are safe for your children. Just because they're your neighbor or a happy babysitter does not mean they're safe.
If you're a parent, you've got to really use some logic and just say, why would that grown-up want my kid to come spend a night at her house, or his
Absolutely.
house?
Look at what Finest Pete Hill did, Dan, and folks. Look at what he did. He served 14 years in prison for trying to kidnap a woman out at Northside out there. When he got out, he got on the computer a couple of years back here, and he thought he was pontificating with a 13-year-old girl in Arkansas, and he went to go meet her, and come to find out they was setting him up because he was trying to mess around with the girls on the computer. But I mean that
right.
I know that case very well, Austin, and and there was a missing. This 14-year-old girl from Milan, been missing since late 80s. Casey McDaniels, and a beautiful girl. I think, I don't know, Casey was 12, 13 years old, but she was friends with my sister. And they were together, Austin, I don't know if you knew, the night before. Is
that right?
Yes. So the authorities, they either charged, did they charge Pete for that finally? Austin?
I think they charged him. I think he confessed to it, but there are several people, Dan, that are saying that they do not believe that he done that. They're saying that they just don't think he done that particular case, on that there.
Well,
so
I don't know.
I'm wondering when that's coming up, Dan. When is that coming up?
I'll check on that, Austin. But yeah, but the point is, and I know where Austin's going with this. These people don't, as they say, a leopard don't change its spots. But apparently, if you're a pedophile, there's not much rehabilitation there.
No, I don't believe so. It's a mental illness beyond repair. It's also the most weak, pathetic, cowardly thing any human could do is to prey on someone vulnerable, especially a child.
Absolutely.
People have to realize, though, when we're talking about digital safety, the concept of stranger danger or the unmarked white van, that's no longer an in-person concern as much as the predators that have direct access to your children on their devices. Even though your child's upstairs in their bedroom where you think they're safe, they often have direct access. There have been children who were sex trafficked and came home to their parents for dinner while still texting with their trafficker. We have to realize the digital realm makes it so much more accessible. Children are not equipped for this type of predation, let's be real. And technology is evolving so rapidly, we need to not only be proactive and stay ahead, we need to educate our children, especially if you think it's wise to give them access to the internet.
Kim Kelley enjoyed the show today. It was a very important show. I learned a lot. Elvis, you learn anything?
I sure did. I'm very impressed with you, Kim. Good work.
DigitalDefendersUnited.org. And Elvis asked you, I want to ask you one more time, what can we do to help you fight this problem with sex trafficking and human trafficking?
I appreciate that. We're going to be putting out a lot more resources and solutions, not only in technological solutions that parents and families can implement. We're going to be holding big tech platforms accountable. I'm not just saying that. I mean that for real. So you can follow the journey. You can share. You can donate. We are a nonprofit right now. We're just getting started, but I've been working in this space for a long time, and I've seen what really needs to be done to solve this problem. I have a very systems-oriented mindset about solving problems and a very do-or-die spirit as well. So I'm willing to talk to not only the policymakers and the legislatures, law enforcement, anyone who needs to come together to solve this problem. Right now, what you can do is protect your children at home, especially in their digital world. If you don't know what they're doing on their devices, please take the time to not only check, make sure that you make that your business because you are the parent and you have that responsibility. Please continue to monitor. Please don't allow your children unlimited, unsupervised access. So if you want to learn more, there's a lot more information on the website. You can contact us. You can ask us your questions. You can send us your hate mail. Tell me what you think. I want to know the problems and the solutions, but I will encourage a solution-oriented approach. It's not about opinions. Let's stick to solutions.
Kim, I assume that predators can actually find IP addresses and find out where these kids are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of these apps have geolocating features, and they also have facial recognition. They have live streaming apps. They have, you know how like on Snapchat and different apps, you can put your location so kids think it's cool to see who's near them.
That's right.
Just realize a lot of your kid may be innocent. I'm going to go with the premise that they are absolutely not aware of what they're endangering themselves by doing on the internet. Let's let kids keep their innocence. Let's take the responsibility to not only be their protectors, but to implement safeguards and preventative measures to help them avoid years of healing and trauma.
Absolutely. We had so many phone calls. It went crazy at the phone banks. But thank you for that, folks. We appreciate all the interaction. And we appreciate the type of adult interaction we had today on a very serious subject. Wouldn't you say, Elvis?
Absolutely. I think we all learned a lot today, and I hope you're back soon.
Thank you. I definitely hope so as well. I appreciate having this dialogue with people that are not only open-minded enough to get it, but who understand the intent behind it. And yes, we can talk about adult things. We're all adults. And yes, we can all agree children deserve protection. And there's a lot of steps we need to take as a society to actually solve that problem. But the good news, in the digital space, we the people can actually do something about that, not only from our homes, but from changing the dynamics that children experience in this digital world. So I'm excited to not only solve this problem in our lifetime, but to impact those things for generations to come.
I applaud what you're doing. Great job.
Thank you.
Website again, folks, is digitaldefendersunited.org. digitaldefendersunited.org. Kim, thank you so much for being here today. We had a blast with you, and we learned a lot, didn't we, Elvis?
Sure did. I liked it a lot.
That's something that you've got, folks, do all you can not to lose your capacity to learn and your desire to learn, no matter what age we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And work together for solutions. I really appreciate you having me again, Dan. It's always a pleasure, and I appreciate this platform and being able to share this message with people that have an open mind and who want to work together for solutions.
Absolutely. It was great to see you. So
Always
glad
great
you
to
came
see
to
you, my
town.
friend. Absolutely.
It was
Me
a
too.
very important show today.
I think so
And
too.
thanks to Solomon Friedman, one of the owners of Pornhub, for coming in, taking the tough questions, and sharing and putting pressure on these other big tech giants to do something to protect our kids from these sexual predators.
Absolutely. I very much want people to look into that more because, again, a lot of this information is public. A lot of the research you can do on your own. Not only the interviews Solomon has done, but in the DOJ investigation. Like, there's a lot of things that people can look into and verify, and I highly encourage them to do so.
Absolutely.